Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast with your host, Mr. Laz Michaelides and Felipe Amorim on the screen opposite me. How you doing, brother?
All good, brother, and you?
Yeah,
Hello,
very well,
everyone.
thank you, very well. Welcome back. We're doing a topical discussion episode this time around. You know, we do a couple of them every year where we sort of take a break from doing some albums and band discussions, and we get down to the nitty-gritty stuff that musicians talk about in the back of a tour van. This subject was brought up by Felipe. So, Felipe, do you want to sort of outline the debate and the topic for us?
Exactly, I will. But I'm going to start by telling the main reason why sometimes we don't discuss albums in depth and we go just to a generic topic is when we are way too tired to prepare something, or when I have a massive hangover, which is not the case today. Although there's a lack of coffee in my house, so it's a nightmare. What a catastrophe! So I'm drinking water. Right? It's nothing to do with hangover. Yeah, my idea was to talk about live albums, right, and how they compare to studio albums, and it raises the question, actually, which I'm going to ask you this.
Okay.
Why would someone record a live album? Because the songs are available. The songs are available, right? You can, especially nowadays with streaming and everything. So why would you go and release something with songs that have already been recorded? And well, I have an answer for that, but I want to hear your answer for that. And also, because it's you can argue that there's a risk that they're not going to sound as good as the studio ones for technical reasons. Yeah.
Well, I think that's interesting because, I mean, one of my favorite interviews about live music playing is actually from Frank Zappa, who has this fantastic interview that we'll put in the show notes where he's talking about guitar solos, and it's during the 80s, and he says, this lady says, she asks him about his guitar and his guitar playing, and he says, well, what I do is very different to everyone else. He says, you go and check out a lot of other musicians and they'll play the same solo every night, and it is just terrific. Like he says, it's in a sarcastic way. He's like, it is just perfect. But for me, he says, what does he say? He says, I've got an imagination. I know roughly how long I have. And then I look at it like a blank canvas, and I get to decorate it with my imagination with his guitar solos. And he said, depending on the backing band and the imagination you have that night, you can do things that would literally seem impossible until they're done on stage. So I love that interview. And that for me sort of tells you about him and his approach to live music, because he never played the same solo twice. And for that reason, it's different. So do you know what? My answer is the audience. The audience is what the difference is. And having an audience there enables you to do certain things. I mean, for the Frank Zappa band, it's a really good one to look at because of the different stuff they did for their audiences. So each night just before they were walking out to do a show, they just say a random word, and that would be the joke word for tonight. So they honestly, pencil, and he'd sing his song, Bobby Brown, and he'd go, hey there, people, I'm Bobby. It should be Brown, but then that night he'd go, Barbie, pencil, and it's just stupid. But it's like this band played together they played together, 200 gigs a year. They've got to do something to keep it interesting and keep it fun. So the Zappa band had their joke. And I think that then as you listen to all of his live albums and you hear the different joke word in each show, you can hear the audiences start laughing when they say pencil for the 10th time. And it just becomes a bit immersive, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So that is a huge element that makes it makes the live album completely different. If you have people in front of you, you don't perform in the same way. Everyone knows that. Every musician who ever picked up a guitar or something knows that if someone is in front of you, that can either scare you or inspire you.
Yeah.
And some bands, they just perform better live than they do in studio. I mean, it's amazing. I don't think it's an easy task to record a live album, but I prefer a live album than a compilation, like a best of. Well, I don't know why someone would. The very best of something. So why don't you just release a live album instead?
With the best of, you're kind of getting it out of context, because if you think that the first song on the best of album, if that was the 10th song of the album it came out on, then maybe the purpose of it was to end an album. So why is it at the start?
Exactly. It was when you have a live album, the order of the songs. Well, if it reflects what they actually played, because the problem with live albums as well, you can just pick one song per gig and do it, And some bands do that. They go on tour, they record about 50 gigs, and then they're gonna pick the best ones. If I'm not wrong, when Pink Floyd recorded Pulse live at Earl's Court, I think they recorded 20 consecutive nights. Something ridiculous like that. They played,
crazy.
They played for over 2 weeks with no breaks, and recorded every single performance. And then the DVD, or at the time was a VHS, I guess, 1994. So the live footage and the audio recordings all came from all sorts of different gigs, same venue. It was like, okay, we played this song. We have like 20 versions of this song. Which one is better played? Or at least it reflects a live situation. The one thing about live albums that might be annoying to true rock fans is when people go there and edit stuff and change stuff. There's a story, but I really tried hard to find the original source of the story, but I'm gonna just tell it anyway. So Deep Purple's Nobody's Perfect is according to Ian Gillan, I found this interview, it reflects everything that is wrong about Deep Purple. He hates the album. Well, they have an absolute classic live album. It's made in Japan.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
But
Nobody's Perfect, I think, is a great album. I love it. But there's a story that Richie Blackmore went back in studio to fix some of the guitar parts. So that's what I don't like about live albums, when someone goes there and does something in studio.
Yeah.
And then they asked Gillan, well, do you want to go and fix some of your vocals? He said, nah, leave it. Nobody's perfect. Well, that's why he almost got there.
It's funny because one of the albums, you sent me an article about the Rolling Stone, the magazine, their best 10 albums, and number 9 on that, live albums, and number 9 on that album is The Last Waltz. Number 9 on that list is The Last Waltz by the band, which is a personal favorite of mine. But that's also come under scrutiny for having had a lot of re-records and fixing and all that sort of stuff, which, then you ask the question, well, is it live? But something I wanted to ask you about the Pink Floyd and Pulse thing that you mentioned, just going back a bit, is what's your approach and what's your opinion on that? Because if they did 20 consecutive nights at the Earl's Court, you'd imagine, and us as live musicians, having gone through this experience of being 20 dates on the road, by the time night 20 comes up, as a band, you are firing on all cylinders. Everything is sounding great. Little hits and nuances that you're doing on nights 17, 18, 19, you weren't doing on nights 1, 2, and 3. You're warmed up properly. Your body's in gear. It's not like the first night of the tour where you got to get used to doing it again because you haven't toured for 3 months or whatever. You're in gear and you're firing on all cylinders by night 20. So is there an argument for recording 20 consecutive nights, picking the best? Or do you think they should just record the last gig?
Well, I would just record the last one. Recording just one is a risk, technically speaking, isn't it? Yeah. Because imagine the singer has got a sore throat on the, the last. So this is like, the band is on fire, the singer is shit. So it might happen. or there's one mistake, or someone breaks a string in the middle of the song, so you can't use that song.
Yeah,
so there's many, So there's many reasons why people would have. Also technical stuff. Maybe there was something wrong capturing the audio of the bass in a particular song or whatever. I think it's just like when you go in studio and do many takes of a song, so you can choose. You can't stop a show and play the same song 3-4 times to make sure you have a good take. So you got to take it from different shows. So I understand that. I prefer when the live album just reflects what the gig was, and I've been to one of those. So have you ever been to any like live album recordings yourself, Laz?
No, I don't think I have. I went and saw one of my favorite metal bands, a band called Bullet for My Valentine. They did a live show that was then turned into a video. But it never became an album. So actually, no, I haven't. Have you?
So I've been to two
Oh, really?
amazing
Which
ones
ones?
in the same city. So I'm gonna I'm gonna brag about this now. So I've been to Rush, the albums Rushing Here. Not okay. A little Portuguese lesson here. It's not Rushing Rio. Rushing Rio.
There
Okay.
we go.
So Rushing Here, here in Janeiro, Brazil. And another one with the same name on the title in here, Iron Maiden, Rockin' Here. I think the album's called Rockin' Here, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
you were there. I
So
forgot about
I
that.
was there, and that's the best. You're part of that one somehow, Laz.
I
You were
am.
probably not even born at the time, anyway.
I was
So
6 years old.
yeah, so I was there with my brother, and the drummer threw the stick, uh, towards the audience, and everyone went forward to try to grab the stick, and he hit a camera. There was a camera moving around like an arm,
Yeah.
metal arm moving the camera, and he hit that thing, and it bounced like over the over the audience. And hit my brother in the belly. And just grabbed the stick accidentally. It's like, fuck, I've got the stick. Let's leave this place. And then we left. It was right at the end of the gig. And where's that stick now?
Well, it was probably one of the best gifts I've ever been gifted from Mr.
There
Felipe
you go.
Amarin, who gave me the stick from Iron Maiden at Rock in Rio, which, yeah, is a very, very important gift because Iron Maiden, one of my favorite bands. And yeah, I got to say thank you to you every time for that because that is an incredible gift. You know, I have a stick that was used at that gig. But what was it like for you being at those gigs? Did you kind of know? My first question is, I wonder if Iron Maiden knew if they were filming it, or if they saw it after and they were like, "This is really good, we got to put it out." But did it feel like there was more energy there? Did you feel like something special had gone on both those nights?
Yeah, I think so. I'll tell you what it is. I know the story about Rush. I don't know about Iron Maiden. But I think they recorded. Well, Iron Maiden was recorded anyway because it was broadcasted live on TV. So they probably
Oh,
had, they had all the audio tracks and the video. And that one, that's what I respect about the album. Is a show start to finish. No, I don't think there's any editing or anything like
right.
it's them on stage, one gig. They only played one night at the event,
Yeah,
and that's that night. And I think all songs were included. So that is a real live performance. I think the reason why they decided to release this because they probably thought, well, when are we going to play for 220,000 people again?
yeah,
I think it's a time where they started trying to limit the amount of people that can go to events because it's dangerous and this and that. And that was one of the last festivals that I've heard of with that ridiculous amount of public, right?
yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons. Is when you see the live footage, it's insane. It's
Yeah,
too
it
many
is.
people.
Yeah.
You can't see me on that one. But the Rush album, Rushing Here, is also that one. They decided in the middle of the tour. They'd never been to South America. I think actually they never been to Mexico. They were touring, and when they played in Mexico, they were like, "Wow, we just had like this like ridiculous like ticket sales Mexico." And then when they reached South America, they started noticing the audiences were bigger and bigger. So they've played as what I've heard, and I've heard that when I was on the bus going to the gig, there's like all those, there wasn't like you can Google stuff and find immediately everything, and I didn't
Yeah.
have a smartphone and all that stuff. But people were talking about, oh, I've heard they're going to record the gig. So wow. So I've heard that on my way to the gigs. I was really, because they've really impressed with the numbers of audiences all over South
Wow.
America. So they wanted to have this recorded, and also the audience were reacting like they were going ballistic every night because they never seen those guys before.
Yeah.
And so there was a reason they really enjoyed the interaction with the audience, and they really thought, well, maybe we're never going to play for that amount of people ever again, so we need to record this. And I think they got a camera crew from Canada to join them halfway through the tour, so they recorded one gig. So they've played for 60,000 people in Sao Paulo, and then they played for 45,000 people, I guess, in Rio de Janeiro, where they recorded. And I think after they finished one of the gigs, I just hired the camera crew, send them over like immediately because we need to do this.
Yeah.
So you understand why a band would like to record and release a live album. That one, again, is a double DVD, I guess. And it's the one show, and I remember the show. They just release it as it is, start to finish, which... I'll take the opportunity to ask you one interesting thing, though. Okay. Rush, they do change a few stuff. They actually, sometimes they can radically change a song and just play a heavy song as an acoustic number. But generally speaking, they're famous for being capable of reproducing live as a three-piece all the overdubs and all the stuff they play in studio, and they play just like the record. What do you think about bands that sound live exactly like the record?
Excuse me. Well, it's interesting. You put me on the spot here. I think aiming to recreate the live sound, aiming to recreate the studio sound, is a technically impressive feat that I think you can sort of come away, especially with a band like Rush, which is only 3 of them. Yeah. And, Geddy Lee, isn't he a bit crazy? Doesn't he play the keyboards with his feet whilst he's...
Yeah, he does have the...
He plays the keyboard with his hands and he does the bass notes with his feet, doesn't he?
And sometimes I think that's the other way around. I think he has some pedals that trigger some keyboard chords as well. So sometimes he might be playing the bass and activating some chords with his feet, but most of the time he plays the keyboard and he has an octave pedal. Is it a Taurus pedal? I don't know the name of it.
Well, that is a special thing to be able to do, especially if you're trying to recreate the sound of the album. And with a band like Rush, where every sound has been meticulously chosen to be put in at a time and at a place in the album, I think that's really good. But at the same time, you know as well as I do from touring as a trio with just guitar, bass, vocals and drums, there is a special energy on select nights when, even though you are limited in terms of the instruments and the noises that are coming out compared to the album, the energy that 3 people, and then the noise and energy that 3 people can make on a live show with limited instruments, I suppose, is actually something to behold. And I think there is a special place for hearing songs in a stripped back way. And whether that be, like you said, acoustic guitar, double bass and 1 snare, or just a 3-piece with all their equipment, but without the second and third guitars, without the keyboard behind, without the vocal effects to such a degree, So, yeah, that's interesting. What do you think about that?
Well, I think if you say, like we just mentioned Pink Floyd, then they would tour as a 10 or 11-piece band. So they get all the extra musicians on stage in order to reproduce every single layer of sound. Yeah. Because the fans expect that, doesn't it? Also, I love a Dire Straits live album called On the Night, and I think it's a 10-piece band. They have pedal steel guitar, saxophone, percussion, and it's really cool when people do that. They bring loads of musicians so they can literally reproduce everything that you have. But I prefer when you just hear a band, like the actual members of the band with no extra musicians and not necessarily playing perfect, playing everything like the record. And I like when the song is slightly faster, or it's a bit sloppy here and there, but the energy is there,
That's why Made in Japan is such a fantastic live album. There are plenty of times where you can hear Ritchie Blackmore going for it on a solo. There's I know it's in Highway Star. There's literally a moment where he's going he's messed up, and it's okay because this is what happens in a live environment. And with someone as talented and as competent on the guitar as Ritchie Blackmore, pushing himself to play faster, as in because the band is playing faster because they're playing live, and I've got no problems with mistakes.
I imagine the quality of the nobody's perfect. Imagine the quality of the monitoring at the time. Could they hear themselves well on stage? You don't know. And it's like, I love it. I love when it's not perfect, but obviously good enough for me. It's like
Yeah.
they can play, they can reproduce, and I like when it's not just like the album, because just saying that this idea of playing just like the record, I think if you go to a gig and the band plays exactly like the album, that might be impressive, and wow, they as good as the album,
Yeah.
really cool. But when you release it as a live album and you listen back to it, okay, so what's the point then? And if they play exactly like studio, then the live experience of being there in front of the band, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
But the listening of an album that sounds like studio, then for me it's a bit pointless.
Without the visuals either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well,
But
yeah, maybe. Yeah, there's some bands. There's a band that I find quite impressive live, Muse, but
yeah.
I reckon they use loads of backing tracks. I might be wrong about it.
No, I assume they do. I mean, yeah, their noise is so big that, despite what we've said, it's actually almost impossible for them to recreate that sound.
Yeah,
with just the three of them. I think there's lots of backing track work going on.
Where do you draw the line with backing tracks and calling it a live gig if you have backing tracks? That's interesting.
It's obviously a hot topic for debate.
Yeah,
I think for me personally, I think if you've got things like, I'm even arguing with myself. I think a click. I think a click is okay. I'll accept a click, and I wouldn't have any arguments to say about that. And not a click that's organised. Not okay. Song intro 1, 2, 3, and then finish song in 3, 4, 5. Like that. I don't like that. But if there's just a tempo that you got, that's okay. I'm okay.
Yeah. For anyone who's not familiar with that, sometimes in some live gigs they require backing tracks or any playbacks in general. You would have a click track going through the ears of either the whole band or just the drummer in some cases, and the band follows the drummer. And so there's a click, literally keeping time for the band. And sometimes that click, as Laz just said, it includes information about the song. I've been, as a pro musician, you play all sorts of gigs and you go through those scenarios where the band tells you that's going to be a click track because we have some keyboards, pre-recorded and backing vocals and this and that, and then you need to play to the click, and then some of those clicks include chorus 2, 3, 4. It's telling you where the song is going. So come on, man.
I like a loose click track. A loose click, but
I don't, and I'll tell you why. As I said to you, being a hired gun for bands and stuff, I don't mind doing whatever people ask me to do, and I'm familiar with that. But I like the imperfection of a live gig, and the click kills that.
You just said that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
it kills that because, okay, so what's the tempo of the song? I love what Steve Gadd said about that. That's maybe one of the most interesting thing about live albums. The tempos are not the same. That changes how crucial a tempo is to a song. Some songs, maybe if they were recorded slower, they wouldn't be hits. You never know, or maybe faster, or whatever. But Steve Gadd, one of my favorite drummers, also he played with Simon Garfunkel, Eric Clapton, you name it. He played with everyone. But he said the right tempo for a song is the tempo I decided that song should be played on that specific night. He said something like that.
Yeah, I like that.
And that's very cool. That's it. There's a really cool BBC interview with Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters quite a few years ago, and it's talking about the live experience, and it says, well, sometimes we, it might be jet lagged or might be bit hungover or whatever, and the song's going to feel a bit slower, and that's how we're going to play it.
Yeah.
And he said that's what it is. Some days you're more excited and you speed up.
Yeah.
And that's part of the human experience of a live gig. And that's one of the points. Okay, it's going to be kind of a Felipe Unleashed here, because that's one of the things I usually opposed to heavily, which is if you have a single thing coming out of the speakers that is pre-recorded, you're not playing a live show. I'm sorry. That's not live.
Yeah, no,
Because
that's
in order to play, let's say, and because the point is, I don't think it's fair to the audience to say live when you go there and you have loads of backing tracks. Because there's a keyboard here and there. All right, but if you have a keyboard as a backing track, who's going to guarantee there's no vocals pre-recorded?
Yeah, backing vocals, yeah,
and lead vocals.
Wow, yeah.
You think only like Britney Spears does that, but there's some rock musicians out there. You guys know who you are. There's some rock musicians out there, who have pre-recorded lead vocals, backing vocals, guitars. So once you add one element of that, it's not live for me anymore. You can say it's a mix of live and studio.
Yeah.
So it's a playback with a band.
Yeah.
Being really harsh here, but that's how I see it.
No, I hear what you're saying for sure. And I think one comment I had to make about earlier was about the speed of the songs is that Metallica in the early 90s, they were on fire. They just released the Black Album and they would play about 30 songs per show because every song was just sped up so much. And I think it was actually a testament to their musicianship and their playing that they were able to sort of perform every night so much faster and keep the songs sounding good and sounding tight. But in regards to what you just said, another point that I've brought up or that I'm thinking of is, isn't it funny that when we say live albums, 99 times out of 100, you're going to reference a rock band, not a pop artist. I mean, jazz. I suppose jazz generally is because that's sort of improvised. I wouldn't ever have imagined sort of Charlie Parker sitting in a studio saying, "No, we need to do this section again."
No. Most jazz bands were recorded like with no overdubs.
So that's
you just go and play.
We're kind of eliminating jazz. We're eliminating jazz from this discussion because it generally is recorded live, right? So isn't it interesting that in modern popular music, rock and metal do a lot of live albums, but pop doesn't necessarily?
Isn't it because there's nothing to be changed or like
exactly.
Well, no, it's like what do you do with a pop band live? You're going to extend the guitar solo. It's not usually what the audiences are looking for,
and that's what we're saying, that the audiences of rock and metal want something maybe not different, but maybe they want the energy that they're hearing from the show. I think there's an interesting point about record labels as well. Nowadays the music industry is pushing really hard for perfection, technical perfection in recording. So everything is fixed. Yeah. And I think that's it's one of the most boring things about modern albums, especially pop music. It's like everything's so fixed to a point. You think, just ask a machine to do it. Yeah, exactly.
So come on, that's why I kind of like AI, because maybe AI is going to replace all those boring bands. Just ask a computer to generate their songs. Is the same thing anyway.
There you go.
But the thing is, labels, they would push for that level of perfection. So why would a label want a live album from a band if that's going to expose the imperfections? And I think a rock audience likes a live album. Yeah, that's why they sell loads, right? Come on, if you consider the, is it Kiss Alive? I don't remember which one. Yes, sold millions. And you have Frampton Comes Alive. You have Eric Clapton Unplugged. All those live albums are best selling. So the labels have a reason to release a live album by a rock band, but I don't think they have. If it's a pop band, also the songs are not going to change, are they?
Very good point. Is there anything else you want to say about live albums before we wrap up this episode? Because what we're going to do, guys, is so we've had the discussion about live albums in this one. Next episode, we're going to talk about studio albums, and then we're going to sort of give our opinion at the end. So is there anything else you want to add?
Yes. The best-selling live album of all times. Because I found this information, and most people don't know what it is. There's a weird thing about when there's a double album, some of the official numbers count as 2 album sales.
Right, because you've sold 2 vinyls.
Yeah, it's a bit. But the actual just a album, that sold more. I don't know the number, but it's Eric Clapton Unplugged.
So because maybe other previously released live albums, they'd have been sold, but the numbers are wrong because there's 2 vinyls.
Well, exactly. Well, so that's what I've, you can put the link to the article, as you do.
That's very interesting.
There's an interesting episode about it. So, and how shocking is that information, right?
It seems a bit cheating, doesn't it?
It wasn't the album, but
it's like using a backing track.
Exactly. But how shocking is that Eric Clapton's Unplugged is the best-selling live album or rock album? I think the best-selling live album of all times. And it's not an album that people talk much about, but
not in the live. Yeah, you're
okay.
Right.
Here's an interesting point. The last thing I want to say is, unplugged albums are definitely a good excuse to record an album because they reflect a huge change in arrangements and how you perform. Yeah, exactly. Sounds. If you listen to Layla, that Clapton I think originally recorded with Derek and the Dominos, his first solo album, not released as a solo album but as a band, and you listen to Layla from that album, and you listen to the acoustic version. It's a complete different song.
Really.
And I like both versions. So that is a reason for you to record something. Like I'm just like not playing. Everyone knows me as an electric guitar player. I'm playing acoustic guitar for a whole gig, and that's what it is. Yeah. So why not? That's exactly. Unplugged albums could be an entirely complete episode if you want to.
Fantastic stuff. All right, well, we'll finish up there for today. Join us again in 2 weeks, guys, where we're going to finish this discussion, but we're going to have a little emphasis on studio albums for a bit, and then we're going to come to our conclusions. So thank you for joining us again. Felipe, tell them where they can find us.
You can find us on the internet.
That's it. And thank you for joining us, guys.
Keep on rocking, everyone.
As usual, long live rock and roll.